The great hall of Station Varanthos 9 stretched wider than any building ever made on Earth. Its curved walls rose toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Light from 3 distant suns poured through massive windows, casting strange shadows across the thousands of alien delegates who sat in their designated sections. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone on a circular platform in the center of it all. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen too much to be easily surprised. Around her, 47 different species watched and waited. Some had scales. Others had feathers. A few had no bodies at all, just floating clouds of light that pulsed with each thought. This was the final day of humanity's evaluation. For 3 long months, Earth had been examined, questioned, and judged. The Galactic Concord wanted to know if humans were worthy of joining their ancient alliance. They wanted to know if humans were safe. High Arbiter Keth Valen sat on an elevated throne at the far end of the hall. He was a sketh, an insectoid creature standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms, compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds, and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His species had ruled this sector of space for 10,000 years. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. To them, humanity was just another young species asking for a seat at the table. We will now proceed with the final portion of the integration protocol, Keth Valen announced. His voice was deep and buzzing, translated instantly by the devices embedded in every delegate's seat. The biosphere assessment. A holographic display flickered to life around Elena. Images of Earth appeared: blue oceans, green forests, sprawling deserts, and frozen poles. Then came the animals. A great white shark swam through the air beside her head. Delegates from ocean worlds nodded with mild interest. They had seen bigger. A saltwater crocodile snapped its jaws. The reptilian Vreath delegation yawned. Their homeworld had predators twice that size. A Siberian tiger prowled across the display. Beautiful, deadly, and completely unimpressive to species who had survived far worse. An African elephant trumpeted silently. The Evrex delegates, small, rabbit-like creatures who had evolved on a world of giants, barely glanced at it. Their ancestors had hidden from beasts that made elephants look like insects. The display continued. Wolves, bears, venomous snakes, spiders. Each one was catalogued, measured, and dismissed. Earth's wildlife was interesting, the delegates seemed to think, but nothing special. The galaxy was full of dangerous creatures. Humanity's planet was simply average. Elena watched their reactions carefully. She saw the boredom in their eyes. She saw how they underestimated her world. She said nothing. Finally, the display faded. Arbiter Keth Valen leaned forward in his throne, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a polite smile among his kind. "Thank you for this presentation, Ambassador Vasquez," he said. "Earth's biosphere is quite diverse. For the record, we must now ask the standard question required by Integration Protocol 7. He paused, checking a data tablet with one of his 4 hands. What is Earth's apex predator? The question was routine. Every species answered it during evaluation. The Sketh had named their acid-spitting hive queens. The Threnkai had named their 6-legged stalkers with paralytic venom. The Veloxi had described the kilometer-long worms that swam through their planet's underground oceans. The delegates expected Elena to name the shark, or perhaps the tiger, maybe even some obscure creature they had not yet seen. Elena Vasquez did none of these things. Instead, she smiled. It was a slow smile, a knowing smile, the kind of smile that started at the corner of her lips and spread outward like a crack forming in ice. Several alien psychologists in the audience would later write reports about that smile. They would call it deeply unsettling and impossible to forget. Elena raised her hand. She extended one finger, and she pointed directly at herself. "We are," she said simply. The hall went silent. For a long moment, nobody moved. The translator devices hummed quietly, checking and rechecking her words. There was no error. She had said exactly what they thought she had said. Arbiter Keth Valen's compound eyes flickered with confusion. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of uncertainty among his species. "I apologize, Ambassador," he said carefully. "Perhaps there has been a translation error. We asked about your planet's apex predator, the dominant hunting species, the creature at the top of your food chain." "I understood the question perfectly, Arbiter." "Then surely you mean to name one of the animals we observed?" The large striped cat, perhaps? Or the ocean predator with the rows of teeth? Elena shook her head slowly. No. I meant exactly what I said. Humans are Earth's apex predator. We are the most dangerous species our planet has ever produced. Whispers erupted across the hall. The Vreeth delegates hissed to each other in confusion. The Ivrex huddled together nervously. Even the floating light beings seemed to pulse faster with surprise. A Threnkai delegate rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with 4 legs and 2 long arms ending in clawed hands. His species were famous hunters, known across the galaxy for their speed and cunning. "Forgive me, Ambassador," he said, his voice smooth and skeptical, "but this seems unlikely. Your kind has no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom. Your bodies are soft and slow. You cannot even run particularly fast compared to many Earth species. How can you claim to be apex predators?" Other delegates murmured in agreement. The Threnkai had made a good point. Humans did not look dangerous. They looked fragile. Elena turned to face the Threnkai directly. Her smile had not faded. "You are correct," she admitted. "We have no claws, no fangs, no armor. Compared to most predators, our bodies are weak. A tiger could kill any human in single combat. A bear could tear us apart. A crocodile could drag us underwater and drown us in seconds." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And yet," she continued, "all of those animals fear us. When a tiger sees a human, it runs. When a bear hears our voices, it retreats. When sharks smell our presence, they swim away. Do you know why?" The Threnkai delegate said nothing. The entire hall was listening now. "Because they remember," Elena said softly. "Somewhere deep in their instincts, buried in millions of years of evolution, they remember what we did to their ancestors. They remember that we hunted them. We killed them. We drove them to the edge of extinction. And we did it without claws, without fangs, without venom." She stepped forward on the platform, her voice growing stronger. "We did it because we do not need natural weapons, Arbiter. We make our own. We did it because we do not need to be fast. We only need to be persistent. We did it because when a human decides something must die," she let the silence hang in the air, "it dies. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far it runs, no matter how strong it is." Arbiter Kethvalen sat very still on his throne. His mandibles had stopped clicking. Around the hall, thousands of alien delegates stared at the small, soft, clawless human standing alone on the platform. For the first time in the evaluation, they were not bored. They were afraid. And Elena Vasquez, Ambassador of Earth, smiled that slow, knowing smile once more. "Now," she said calmly, "would you like me to explain?" The silence in the great hall stretched on for several heartbeats. Thousands of alien eyes remained fixed on the human woman standing alone on the central platform. Ambassador Elena Vasquez waited patiently. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than words. Finally, Arbiter Kethvalen shifted in his throne. His forearms gripped the armrests tightly, and his compound eyes seemed darker than before. "Yes," he said slowly. "Explain." Elena nodded and raised her hand. The holographic display flickered back to life, but this time it did not show sharks or tigers. Instead, it showed a map of Earth as it appeared 200,000 years ago. "Let me start at the beginning," she said. "When humans first appeared on Earth, we were not the dominant species. We were not even close. Our planet was filled with creatures far larger, faster, and deadlier than us. Saber-toothed cats with fangs as long as your forearm. Giant bears that stood 4 meters tall. Wolves the size of small horses. Mammoths with tusks that could crush bones like dry twigs. The holographic display showed each creature as she named them. The delegates watched with renewed interest. These animals were impressive, far more dangerous than the modern creatures they had seen earlier. Humans had none of their advantages, Elena continued. We could not outrun them. We could not outfight them. In any direct confrontation, we would lose. And yet, she waved her hand, and the display changed. A timeline appeared, showing the spread of humanity across the globe. And alongside that spread, a pattern emerged, a pattern of extinction. Wherever humans went, these creatures vanished. The Threnkai delegate who had spoken earlier leaned forward in his seat. His species prided themselves on their hunting abilities. They had conquered their homeworld through speed and intelligence, but even they had never caused extinctions on this scale. How? he asked. If you could not defeat them in combat, how did you destroy them? Elena smiled. We did not fight them. We followed them. The display changed again. It showed a group of early humans, small, thin figures with no weapons except wooden spears and stone tools. They stood at the edge of a vast grassland, watching a herd of antelope in the distance. This is called persistence hunting, Elena explained. Most predators on Earth rely on speed. They chase their prey, catch it quickly, or give up. Their bodies overheat. They must rest. But humans are different. She pointed at one of the figures in the display. We do not overheat. We sweat. It sounds simple, but it changed everything. While other predators must stop to cool down, humans can keep moving. We can walk and run for hours, days, even. Our bodies were built for endurance, not speed. The display began to animate. The human figures started walking toward the antelope herd. The animals noticed them and ran away easily, disappearing over a hill. The prey escapes, Elena narrated. Any other predator would give up now. But humans do not give up. The figures kept walking, over the hill, across a river, through a forest. Hour after hour, the display showed them following the tracks, never stopping, never resting. The antelope is faster, Elena said. It runs away again and again, but each time it must stop to rest. Each time it sees those same figures appearing on the horizon, walking, always walking, never stopping. The delegates watched in growing unease as the animation continued. The sun rose and set. The antelope grew tired. Its runs became shorter. Its rests became longer. And still, the humans kept coming. This is what our ancestors discovered, Elena said quietly. We cannot catch our prey, but we can follow it. We can track it across any terrain. We can outlast it. And eventually, after hours, or even days, the display showed the final scene. The antelope collapsed from exhaustion, its heart giving out from the endless chase. The humans walked up to it calmly and killed it with their simple spears. It dies. Not from our strength, not from our speed, but from our refusal to stop. The hall was completely silent now. Several delegates had stopped translating her words to their companions. They simply stared. A Veloxy delegate spoke up. Her species were aquatic, sleek, and eel-like, with dozens of small tentacles and large, intelligent eyes. They had evolved on a world where survival meant hiding from acid-spitting worms that could swallow entire buildings. You followed your prey, she said slowly, until it died of fear and exhaustion. Yes, for days, sometimes longer. There are human tribes on Earth who still practice this method. They call it the long hunt. They consider it a sacred tradition. The Veloxy delegate's tentacles curled inward, a sign of distress among her kind. That is not hunting. That is something else entirely. Perhaps, Elena agreed. But it worked. And we did not stop with antelope. She waved her hand, and the display showed a new timeline. This one focused on large predators, the saber-toothed cats, the giant bears, the massive wolves. Every apex predator that threatened early humans is now extinct, Elena said. We did not defeat them through combat. We defeated them through patience. We learned their patterns. We found their weaknesses. We followed them until they were too tired to fight, and then we killed them. She let the words settle before continuing. But that is not all we did. We also did something no other species on Earth ever managed. The display changed to show wolves, not the giant extinct ones, but modern wolves, standing beside humans. We tamed them. Arbiter Kethvalen's mandibles clicked sharply. You tamed apex predators? We did more than tame them. We changed them. Over thousands of years, we turned wolves into dogs, loyal companions who would fight and die for us. We took a predator that could have killed us and made it part of our pack. More images appeared. Horses carrying human riders, cattle being herded by human farmers, elephants lifting heavy loads, falcons diving from human hands to catch prey. We did not just survive alongside other predators, Elena said. We conquered them. We domesticated them. We bent the entire animal kingdom to our will, not through strength or speed, but through patience, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept anything except victory. She turned to face the Arbiter directly. You asked what Earth's apex predator is. The answer is not a single species. The answer is a single truth. Humans have never encountered a living thing on our planet that we could not eventually dominate. Predators, prey, ecosystems, entire species. We have shaped them all to serve our purposes. The Arbiter's wings twitched nervously behind his throne. Among the Sketh, this was a sign of deep concern. And if something could not be dominated, he asked carefully. Elena's smile returned. Cold, patient, unshakable. Then we destroyed it. We hunted it to extinction. We erased it from existence so completely that only bones remained. And then we put those bones in buildings called museums, so our children could look at them and remember what happens to species that threaten humanity. She spread her arms wide, gesturing to the entire assembly. Every delegate here represents a species that survived, that reached the stars, that built civilizations. But I wonder how many of you have looked back at your own history. How many species on your homeworlds went extinct as your kind rose to power? The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Many delegates shifted in their seats. Many did not meet her eyes. Humans are not special because we are dangerous, Elena concluded. The galaxy is full of dangerous creatures. Humans are special because we do not accept limits. We do not stop when we are tired. We do not give up when we are hurt. We adapt. We learn. We overcome. And anything that stands in our way. She paused, eventually stopped standing at all. Arbiter Keth Valen raised one of his 4 hands, signaling for a recess. His compound eyes swept across the assembly, seeing the unease on hundreds of alien faces. We will take a brief pause, he announced. The council must discuss what we have heard. As delegates began filing out of the hall, many glanced back at the human woman still standing calmly on the platform. She had not moved. She had not raised her voice. She had simply told them the truth. And the truth, it seemed, was terrifying. The recess was supposed to last 1 hour. It lasted 6. Behind closed doors, the Galactic Concord's Security Committee held an emergency meeting. Representatives from every major species demanded answers. What else did humanity hide? How dangerous were these soft, clawless creatures, really? Could they even be trusted with membership in the Concord? Ambassador Elena Vasquez waited patiently in a small room adjacent to the main hall. She drank water. She ate a simple meal from Earth. She read a book on her tablet. She showed no sign of worry or concern. When the doors finally opened again, the atmosphere in the Great Hall had changed completely. The boredom from the morning session was gone. In its place was something sharper, a mixture of curiosity, fear, and determination. Arbiter Keth Valen took his place on the throne. His movements were stiffer than before. His compound eyes never left Elena as she walked back to the central platform. The Security Committee has decided, he announced, that a full species threat assessment is necessary before we can proceed. Ambassador Vasquez, you will provide complete information about humanity's history, capabilities, and psychology. Nothing may be hidden or withheld. Do you understand? Elena nodded calmly. I understand, and I will comply fully. Then let us begin. The questions came quickly at first. Basic things about human biology, population numbers, technological development. Elena answered everything honestly and directly. She had nothing to hide. But then the questions grew darker. A Sketh military advisor stood and consulted his data tablet. Our analysis of human broadcast signals reveals something troubling. Your species appears to engage in frequent armed conflicts. Can you explain this? Elena took a slow breath. Yes, humans have been fighting each other since before we developed written language. Wars over territory, wars over resources, wars over ideas, wars over religion. Sometimes wars over nothing at all except pride and anger. How frequent are these conflicts? We have calculated that for approximately 97% of our recorded history, humans have been at war somewhere on our planet. The number hung in the air like poison. 97%. The delegates exchanged horrified glances. Even species known for their aggression, the Vreth, the Sketh themselves, had nothing approaching that number. That is impossible, the military advisor said. No species could sustain such constant warfare. You would have destroyed yourselves. We nearly did, Elena admitted. Several times. But we always found a way to continue. A Yith delegate rose next. The Yith were small and fragile-looking, with pale blue skin and large, sad eyes. They were renowned healers, valued across the galaxy for their medical knowledge. We have reviewed your military history, she said softly. We found references to something called nuclear weapons. Can you explain what these are? Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression was grim. Nuclear weapons use the power of atoms themselves to create explosions. A single bomb can destroy an entire city, kill millions of people in seconds, leave the land poisoned and uninhabitable for generations. The Yith delegate trembled. And humans possess these weapons? Yes, we have possessed them for over 300 years. Have they ever been used? The silence stretched on. Elena's jaw tightened. Yes, twice. Both times on ourselves. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. The Yith delegate sat down heavily, her large eyes filled with horror. Around her, other delegates whispered frantically to each other. Some looked at Elena as if she had suddenly transformed into a monster. Arbiter Kethvalan raised a hand for silence. His voice was strained when he spoke. You created weapons capable of destroying cities, and then used them on your own kind. Yes. Why? To end a war. Elena's voice was steady but tired. We believed that a terrible blow would bring peace faster than continued fighting. We were right. But the cost? She shook her head. The cost haunts us still. The questions continued for hours. Each answer seemed to disturb the delegates more than the last. They learned that humans had created diseases as weapons, poisons that could kill thousands, gases that burned lungs and melted skin, tools of destruction limited only by human imagination. They learned about human psychology, how humans could form deep bonds with almost anything, pets, machines, even enemies. A Sketh psychologist asked about this, confused by reports of human soldiers saving wounded opponents. We call it compassion, Elena explained. Or sometimes empathy. Humans can feel the pain of others. It drives us to help, to protect, to love. But this seems contradictory, the psychologist said. You describe weapons of mass destruction, and then you speak of love. How can both exist in the same species? Elena smiled sadly. That is the great contradiction of humanity. We are capable of tremendous kindness and tremendous cruelty. Sometimes in the same moment, sometimes by the same person. We have saints who devoted their lives to helping others, and monsters who killed millions without remorse. Both are equally human. The Threnkai delegate spoke again. His earlier skepticism had faded, replaced by something closer to fascination. We have heard about your weapons and your wars, but what of your endurance? Our doctors report that human bodies can survive damage that would kill most species. Is this accurate? It is, Elena confirmed. Humans are remarkably difficult to kill. Our bodies can function with severe injuries. We can lose limbs and survive. We can suffer wounds that should be fatal and keep fighting for hours. She pulled up a new display medical records from Earth's history. Here is a human soldier who continued fighting after being shot 17 times. Here is a pilot who landed her aircraft safely with third-degree burns covering half her body. Here is a doctor who performed surgery on himself to remove a burst appendix because no other help was available. The images scrolled past. Each one showed humans surviving what should have been unsurvivable. Broken bones, missing limbs, wounds that exposed internal organs. We do not give up easily, Elena said simply. Our bodies are designed to keep functioning long past the point of reasonable survival, and our minds are even more stubborn than our bodies. The Yith medical delegate stood again. Her voice was barely a whisper. We have one final question. It may be the most important one. Elena nodded for her to continue. Your species has developed weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. You have fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. You have poisoned your own air, water, and land with pollution. By all logic, you should be extinct. The Yith's voice cracked slightly. How? How are you still alive? The question echoed through the silent hall. Every delegate leaned forward, waiting for the answer. Elena thought for a long moment before responding. Because we refuse to die, she said finally. Every time we have pushed ourselves to the brink of extinction, we have found a way back. We have rebuilt from ashes. We have healed wounds that seemed permanent. We have looked at the destruction we caused and said, never again. And then sometimes we broke that promise, and then we made it again, and kept making it until we meant it. She spread her hands. Humanity is not wise. We are not peaceful. We make terrible mistakes, and we often repeat them. But we are stubborn, we are adaptable. And no matter how many times we fall, we get back up. Every single time. Arbiter Keth Valen sat motionless on his throne. His wings were pressed flat against his back, a sign of extreme stress among the Sketh. This assessment has revealed much, he said slowly. Perhaps too much. The Security Committee will need time to consider whether humanity is suitable for membership in the Concord. He paused, his compound eyes studying Elena with new intensity. But I must ask one more question, Ambassador. Not as an arbiter, but as one being to another. Elena met his gaze steadily. Ask, are you not frightened of yourselves? After everything you have done, the wars, the weapons, the destruction, do you not fear what humanity might become? Elena considered the question carefully. When she answered, her voice was quiet but firm. Every day, she admitted. We fear ourselves every single day. But that fear is what keeps us trying to be better. We know what we are capable of. We have seen it. We have lived it. And so we keep fighting not against other species, but against the darkness inside ourselves. She straightened her shoulders. That is what it means to be human, Arbiter. To know the monster you could become, and to choose every day to be something else instead. The hall remained silent as the weight of her words settled over the assembly. For the first time, some of the delegates looked at the human not with fear, but with something approaching respect. 3 days after the threat assessment, the Ivrex coalition made its move. The Ivrex were small creatures, barely reaching the waist of an average human. They had soft fur, large ears, and gentle eyes that made them look like something humans might keep as pets. But their appearance was deceiving. The Ivrex had survived on a world of giants, massive predators that had hunted their ancestors for millions of years. They had learned that the most dangerous threats often came in small packages, and they were terrified of humanity. Their representative, a silver-furred female named Counselor Vaisha, stood before the full assembly and made her demand. We cannot trust words alone, she declared. The humans have told us many things about their abilities. Perhaps they speak truth, perhaps they exaggerate. We request that humanity be subjected to the Crucible trial. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Crucible was an ancient test, used rarely in modern times. It dropped a species representative onto a designated death world, a planet specifically chosen for its hostile environment and dangerous life forms. The purpose was simple: prove your species' worth through survival. Many delegates expected Ambassador Vasquez to protest. The Crucible was considered extreme, even insulting. Some species had refused it entirely, accepting rejection from the Concord rather than risking their lives. Elena Vasquez did not protest. We accept, she said immediately. Counselor Vaisha's ears twitched with surprise. You accept? Without conditions? One condition, Elena replied. We choose our own representative. This was standard. Each species had the right to select their best survivor for the trial. The Sketh had sent their most decorated warrior. The Threnkai had chosen their fastest hunter. The Veloxi had selected a specialist trained in extreme environments. The Concord agreed to Elena's condition. The trial was set for 1 week later. When the human transport ship arrived at Station Varanthos 9, the delegates gathered to see what kind of warrior humanity would send. They expected someone impressive, someone engineered for combat, someone terrifying. What they got was Marcus Chen. Marcus was 58 years old. He had gray hair, weathered skin, and the kind of calm patience that came from decades of difficult work. He walked slowly, not from weakness, but from habit. He carried a small pack on his back and wore simple clothing. When he smiled at the assembly, the wrinkles around his eyes deepened. He looked like someone's grandfather. Because he was. Counselor Vaisha stared at him in disbelief. This is your champion? This elderly male? Elena nodded. Marcus Chen, former search and rescue volunteer, wilderness survival instructor for 30 years, father of 3, grandfather of 4. He is old. He is slow. He carries no weapons. He carries everything he needs. The delegates exchanged confused glances. Surely this was some kind of joke, some human tactic they did not understand. No species would send an old man to face the Crucible. But Marcus simply adjusted his pack and smiled. Shall we begin? He asked. The Crucible world was called Vorthan 6. It had been engineered as a testing ground by a species that had vanished from the galaxy long ago. They had filled it with the most dangerous creatures they could create, predators designed to kill, environments designed to destroy. Acid storms swept across the surface every few hours. The temperature swung from freezing cold to burning heat without warning. The plants were carnivorous. The water was poisonous unless carefully filtered. And the predators were nightmares made flesh. The largest was a creature the Concord called a harvester. It stood 5 meters tall on 6 powerful legs. Its hide was armored like tank plating. Its forearms ended in claws that could tear through metal. It hunted by sound and smell, tracking prey across vast distances with terrifying patience. Previous crucible trials had established clear survival times. Most species lasted 4 to 6 hours. The best especially trained Thrunkai warrior had survived 19 hours before being extracted with critical injuries. Marcus Chen was dropped onto Vorthan 6 with nothing but his small pack. The observation drones followed him as he landed in a clearing surrounded by twisted black trees. He stood still for exactly 3 minutes, listening, smelling, watching. Then he started walking. The first day passed without incident. Marcus found a small cave, checked it carefully for dangers, and made it his base. He collected water from a stream, filtered it through materials from his pack, and stored it in containers he made from local plants. He built a small fire using friction techniques older than human civilization. The delegates watched with confusion. He was not running. He was not hiding. He was simply living. On the second day, a harvester found his trail. The observation drones captured everything. The massive creature stalked toward Marcus's cave, its armored head swinging back and forth as it tracked his scent. Any other species would have fled, would have tried to run, would have died. Marcus did not run. He had spent the morning digging a pit near his cave and covering it with branches. When the harvester stepped onto the covering, it crashed through into the hole below. The creature roared in fury, clawing at the walls. But the pit was too deep and too narrow for it to climb out. Marcus walked to the edge and looked down at the trapped monster. Then he returned to his cave and continued preparing his evening meal. The delegates could not believe what they were seeing. Days passed. Marcus explored the surrounding area, mapping the terrain in his mind. He identified which plants were safe to eat. He learned which streams were least poisonous. He built tools from stone and bone, simple things, but effective. On day 5, he began tracking the harvesters. The observation team thought they had made an error. Surely the human was not hunting the most dangerous predator on the planet. But the footage was clear. Marcus had found a harvester territory near his water source. He had decided it was a threat, so he began studying it. He watched from hidden positions, noting when the creatures slept, when they ate, when they were most alert. He tracked their movements across the terrain. He found their weaknesses, their poor eyesight, their difficulty climbing, their vulnerability to certain sounds. On day 7, he killed his first harvester. The method was almost absurdly simple. He had dug another pit trap, larger than the first. He had baited it with the remains of animals he had caught, and when the harvester fell in, he had dropped heavy rocks on its head until it stopped moving. Then he had butchered it for meat. The observation team sent an emergency report to the Concord. Their message was short but urgent. The human is not surviving. He is conquering. By day 9, Marcus had established a permanent camp. He had built a shelter from harvester hide stretched over wooden frames. He had created a smokehouse to preserve meat. He had even constructed a simple bed, raised off the ground, to avoid nocturnal predators. That night, the observation drones captured footage that would be studied by xenobiologists for centuries. Marcus Chen sat beside a small fire, roasting meat from the creature that had killed 3 Veloxi scouts in previous trials. He ate slowly, savoring each bite. Occasionally he looked up at the stars and smiled. He was not afraid. He was not desperate. He was comfortable. When the extraction team arrived on day 11, they found Marcus building a larger shelter. He had decided to expand, he explained. The cave was getting cramped. "Do I have to leave?" he asked, seeming genuinely disappointed. "I was just getting settled." The extraction officer, a Sketh soldier who had faced combat across a dozen worlds, could not find words to respond. Marcus shrugged, shouldered his pack, and walked toward the extraction ship. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at Vorthan 6. "Nice planet," he said thoughtfully. "Could use some better water sources, but the hunting is excellent." Then he climbed aboard and asked if anyone had coffee. The expected survival time for the Crucible was 4 to 6 hours. The previous record was 19 hours. Marcus Chen, a 58-year-old grandfather from Earth, had survived for 11 days, and he had asked to stay longer. When the footage reached the Galactic Assembly, the debate about humanity's membership changed forever. The HFY Coalition withdrew their objection. They had wanted to test humanity's survival abilities. They had gotten their answer. The Great Hall of Station Varanthos 9 had never been so full. Every seat was occupied. Delegates stood along the walls. Holographic projectors carried the proceedings to billions of beings across the galaxy. This was the day the Concord would vote on humanity's membership, and everyone wanted to witness it. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the central platform, exactly where she had stood months ago when this all began. She looked the same, calm, patient, unshakable. But the hall around her had transformed completely. Where there had once been boredom, now there was attention. Where there had been dismissal, now there was respect. And where there had been casual curiosity, now there was something far more complex, a mixture of admiration and fear that would take generations to fully understand. Arbiter Keth Valen called the assembly to order. His compound eyes swept across the chamber, seeing the weight of history in this moment. We have gathered to vote on the petition of humanity for full membership in the Galactic Concord, he announced. Before we proceed, any delegate may speak. Councillor Vesha of the HFY Coalition rose first. The small, silver-furred alien looked exhausted. She had not slept well since watching the footage from Vorthan 6. The HFY Coalition wishes to withdraw our objection to humanity's membership, she said. Her voice was tired but firm. We requested the Crucible trial because we believed humans were exaggerating their abilities. We were wrong. She paused, her large eyes finding Elena across the chamber. We have survived on our homeworld by learning to recognize threats, by knowing when to run and when to hide. For 10,000 years, this wisdom has kept us alive. She lowered her head. When we look at humanity, our instincts scream warnings. Every part of our biology tells us these creatures are dangerous. More dangerous than anything we have ever encountered. The hall was silent. Other prey species delegates nodded in agreement. They felt it too, that deep, primal alarm that humanity triggered in their ancient brains. But we have also learned another lesson. Vesha continued. Sometimes the greatest danger is not your enemy. It is the enemy you refuse to make into a friend. She turned to face the full assembly. Humanity is terrifying. But they are also here, asking to join us. Asking to be allies, asking to share their strength instead of using it against us. We would be fools to refuse. She sat down. The HFY Coalition had cast their unofficial vote. Next rose Councillor Vreth Nak of the Vreth Dominion. His species were reptilian, cold-blooded predators, with scales like armor and teeth designed for tearing flesh. They respected strength above all else. The Vreth have watched humanity closely, he said, his voice a deep rumble. We have seen their wars, their weapons, their endless capacity for destruction. His lips curled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth and what might have been a smile. We approve. Scattered clicks and murmurs followed this statement. The Vreth were not known for approving of anything. Humanity has proven what the Vreth have always believed, Vrethnak continued. That survival belongs to those who fight hardest, who refuse to yield, who meet every challenge with teeth bared and claws ready. He nodded toward Elena. These humans have no claws, but they have something better. They have will, and will cannot be broken. He sat down. Another vote cast. One by one, delegates rose to speak. Some expressed concern, some shared fears. But as the hours passed, a consensus began to emerge. Humanity was dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than any species the Concord had ever welcomed. But that danger could become protection. That strength could become security. Finally, a Threnkai philosopher named Ivreth Sol rose from his seat. His species had studied predation for longer than most civilizations had existed. They understood hunters better than anyone. I wish to offer a correction to our records, he said. His voice was soft, but carried through the hall with perfect clarity. When we began this evaluation, we asked the wrong question. He walked down from the Threnkai section toward the central platform, his forelegs moving with fluid grace. We asked, what hunts on Earth? What kills? What threatens? He shook his head slowly. These were foolish questions. We should have asked something far more important. He stopped beside Elena, turning to face the assembly. We should have asked, what survives on Earth? What endures? What refuses to die no matter what obstacles it faces? He gestured toward the human beside him. The answer to both questions is the same. Humans. They hunt because they survive. They kill because they endure. They threaten because nothing has ever stopped them, not ice ages, not famines, not diseases, not even themselves. His voice grew stronger. Humans do not merely occupy the apex position on their planet. They define it. They reshape ecosystems to suit their needs. They domesticate predators. They build tools that dwarf natural weapons. They treat extinction-level events as obstacles to overcome, not endings to accept. He paused, letting his next words carry maximum weight. They are not an apex predator. They are the apex predator, perhaps the most successful this galaxy has ever seen. And they are asking to join us. He turned to face Arbiter Keth Valen directly. I believe we should say yes. Not because we are foolish enough to believe we could stop them, but because we are wise enough to recognize what they could become, either the greatest allies the Concord has ever known, or the most terrible enemy we could ever face. He returned to his seat. The hall buzzed with quiet discussion. Arbiter Keth Valen rose from his throne. His forearms spread wide, calling for attention. The discussion period has ended. We will now vote on humanity's membership in the Galactic Concord. All in favor? Across the hall, lights flickered to life. Green for yes, red for no. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the green lights began appearing. One section, then another, then dozens at once. When the count finished, every single light in the hall glowed green. The vote was unanimous. Keth Valen's mandibles clicked, not with distress this time, but with something approaching wonder. The motion passes. Humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Concord. Welcome to the stars. The hall erupted in sound. Cheers, clicks, hisses, and sounds humans had no words for filled the air. Delegates rose from their seats. Some rushed toward Elena to offer congratulations. Others hung back, still processing what this decision would mean for the galaxy's future. Elena stood perfectly still through all of it. Her expression never changed. She had known this moment would come. She had planned for it. And now that it was here, she felt only a quiet sense of completion. Hours later, when most delegates had departed, Arbiter Keth Valen approached her one final time. The great hall was nearly empty now. Their words would not be recorded. Ambassador Vasquez, he said quietly, may I ask you something? Not for the record, just for myself. Elena nodded. Of course. Now that you have access to the stars, now that the entire galaxy is open to your kind, what do you intend to do? Elena smiled. It was the same smile from that first day, slow and knowing, with something ancient hiding behind her eyes. The same thing we have always done, Arbiter. Explore, adapt, survive. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. And if something out there threatens what we love, our families, our homes, our friends, our allies, we will hunt it down, however long it takes, however far it runs. Keth Valen's wings shivered against his back. He suddenly understood why the translator had rendered certain human words the way it had. Humans called their star vessels ships, the same word they used for the wooden craft that had carried their ancestors across deadly oceans, the same vessels that had taken them into unknown waters, toward unseen horizons, into danger and discovery alike. They had always been explorers. They had always been hunters, and now, the galaxy was their new ocean. The stars were their new horizon, and whatever waited out there in the darkness would learn to fear the persistence of humanity. Elena extended her hand toward the Arbiter. It was a human gesture, she explained, a sign of friendship, of alliance, of trust. Keth Valen hesitated for only a moment. Then one of his four hands reached out and grasped hers. Welcome to the Concord, he said. Thank you, Elena replied. I think this is the beginning of something remarkable. She released his hand and turned toward the exit. As she walked away, Keth Valen watched her go, this small, soft, clawless creature, who had changed everything the galaxy believed about what it meant to be dangerous. Behind her, through the massive windows of the Great Hall, a human fleet hung in orbit around the station, dozens of ships, each one carrying thousands of the most persistent, most adaptable, most stubborn beings the universe had ever produced. The The stars had never seemed quite so full of possibility, or quite so full of danger. Humanity had arrived, and they were just getting started.